Check the description for the following discount codes. We're going to look at another item that's been loaned to me from Bob at raceathome.co.uk. The manufacturers of the lowrider that you see on my motion setup behind me here. I'll put a clip up now. That's the traction loss and the surge specifically in this video. There are, of course, 4 vertical PT actuator upright actuators there for everything else as well. And Bob from Race at Home sells both his low rider, his low slider, which adds an additional actuator at the front so the whole thing can slide left to right rather than just at the back. I think that is now available. But yeah, he sells everything from these, purveyor of all sorts of motion options, along with a couple of VR headsets and some other bits and pieces as well. So take a look at Bob's website, see if there's anything there that takes your fancy. But yes, he's loaned me this, along with some other bits and bobs, as you well know if you've seen previous reviews. This is a Gomez GXL Pro wheel, and we'll just get a little close-up on it here. It doesn't come with this hub that you see on the back, but I've left it on because it makes it easier to stand up for the video. You can see we've got our 4 paddles, or 2 paddles and clutches, I should say, on the sides there. We've got some nice rubberized grips, and they are very grippy. And then we have an array of buttons, some carbon fiber, and this is available in a few different colorways. So I'll just get some screen capture on the go and show you those different colorways now, just so you can have a peek. The price is £735, and that's with the carbon fiber paddle option. If you want the aluminium paddle option, it's £714. Now it's the aluminium ones that you can see we have on this wheel here. Now I may as well talk about those, as I'm already talking about them. The action is solid and smooth. They feel like high-end magnetic paddle shifters should. They give a nice reassuring click, but without being too loud. So I really do like, and again, if you look at the construction, the machining of them, they're almost like way over engineered, to be honest, for something that's just as simple as what is in reality an on and off input. And the same goes, for the analog ones at the bottom. They obviously they don't click, but they are great quality. You can just about see the wires that run to them. I don't know, can you see that in there? You might do, just under there. But yeah, these have got a nice sprung weight to them, but you don't get that click like you do with these, because obviously they are analog, so you want a smooth transition. If anything, they're almost a little too heavy for my fingers. But this is an interesting point. This wheel is, I think it's 310 mil diameter, but it feels big in my hands. Now I don't have the biggest hands in the world, so for me, reaching the buttons is actually a bit of a stretch. In fact, I put a clip up of me using it, and I think in this clip you see me operating the buttons as well. But yeah, I actually would have to let go of this wheel to reach the bottom 2 most buttons in use, or sort of loosen my grip, so to speak. So this is definitely a wheel for people with bigger hands than what I have. As I say, I haven't got the biggest hands in the world. It's got a great weight to it, even without this aluminium hub on the back. It's still a hefty wheel, and like I say, the grips are big and chunky in the hands. I mean, you probably see here that I would struggle to go any lower, really. I know I'm a bit of a funky angle there, but yeah, definitely something for people on the bigger hands, I would say. And speaking of funky, let's talk about the switches and the dials that we have. We've got 10 momentary buttons. So these are just your standard push buttons here. Now these are metal, they're probably aluminium, and they have a lovely tactile feel to them. They do not feel cheap in any way. I mean, they shouldn't do. The price of the wheel's over 700 notes. And again, I say this in all my high-end wheel reviews, I do think the price of high-end sim wheels is a little bit silly in a lot of cases. 700 odd pounds for a selection of inputs, you know, on a solid frame with some carbon fibre and some rubber. There's a lot of money, but it is just the way it is. This is no different to any of the other high-end wheels available, you know, with regards to pricing. So it is how it is. But that's why we can be very critical about the quality, the fit and the finish of everything, because we're paying very strong money for these things. But I can confidently say these switches, these momentary ones, feel great. We also get 5 push-button rotary encoders. These are what you see here. So they push in and they rotate as well. Now, these are the weakest point of this wheel, I would say, because the tactile feel of the push button feels quite cheap and there's very little weight to these. They're very smooth. They don't feel cheap in their rotational operation, but there's very little, almost like no weight to them. And, you know, other high-end wheels that I've used have a good sort of clunk as they turn round. These would be easier to sort of over-rotate if you were doing things in a rush mid-race and you needed to adjust something. But that's kind of personal preference. Some of you might like a lighter feel to the rotation. Others may prefer a heavier rotation. I personally prefer a heavier rotation. But certainly the push-button operation, you might hear it just. There's very little resistance there to that as well. You know, it feels far less satisfying than these momentary push buttons. So I'm not a fan of the rotaries. The 7-way funky, which is the one at the bottom here, that has a more solid feel and feedback to it than what these other 5 do. Now that might be because I have less leverage, it being like what, less than 50% of the diameter. It could be that, but it feels much nicer in my opinion. And the up, down, left and right also has a more solid feel and greater resistance than the pushing of these 5 here. So for me, the inputs on the front is a 50-50 mix of things I like and things I don't. The momentaries feel great, the funky switch feels great, the 5 rotaries in the middle, not so much. Can you see that? Yeah, you can see that. So what else do we have here? So it's made, we've got 5mm carbon fibre thick faceplate, which is the faceplate you see here. If we look down the profile, that is indeed 5mm. The handles are direct injection silicone handles. They have a really nice, smooth and grippy feel to them, so I do like that. The rest of the construction is 6061 aluminium. We have the dual clutches, obviously, that we spoke about, and the aluminium paddles. And there is a 70mm threaded bolt pattern on the back, so you will need to use a hub or an adapter of some sort, depending on what, you know, wheelbase you want to fit this to. And the only other things that this comes with in the package is some extra labels, which I've neglected to get out, and of course a cable. Now this is one thing that I'm not a fan of. In use, it's not really an issue if you wrap it out the way somewhere where it isn't going to be dangling or get caught. But I remember using one, actually it was at Race at Home, I was using one on one of their rigs. The USB kept coming unplugged as I was racing. But that was on a test, one of Bob's test rigs, so nothing was set up permanently and it was just dangling. But that's a good example of how you should fit it, coil it round somewhere out the way and have this plugged into something solid so it can't pop out. But the cable itself is obviously this coiled offering you see here. It's of good quality, it doesn't feel cheap, it feels nice. And we've got a 4-pin DIN plug here that screws into the back of the wheel there, and that is a good, solid, reliable connection. It doesn't get in the way of the hub or the bolts, which I thought it might do initially. I mean, probably shouldn't have thought that because they will obviously have tested this when they designed it to know it doesn't get in the way, but that is where it goes. I'll just put it in now so you can see, and it does screw in. There's quite a few threads here, so it isn't just like a push and clip jobby. It actually screws in, so you've got there's no, you know, I could hold the weight of the wheel, probably shouldn't do, but I'm going to, on the wire there, and that isn't going to come out. So that is a good solid connection. And as I say, wrap this somewhere so it will be out the way and it works just fine. Obviously, you know, in today's sim racing world, we have many, many wireless connectivity options as far as steering wheels go. And, you know, seeing that you need to use a cable here is a little bit old school, you might say, but it does function. It is reliable. You don't have any issues with latency or drop connections because it's physically plugged in. This is another example where the new Acertech wheelbases have like a built-in USB hub. That would be perfect for running something like this. I mean, their wheelbases do offer wireless connectivity, or wireless as in there's not a wire like this, with their wheels. But should you want to put on a wheel, you know, a Gomez wheel like this, for example, on an Acertech wheelbase, all you would need is an adapter for this to go to USB-C, and it will plug straight in the back of the wheelbase, and that's one less cable you'd need to run to your PC. Like for me, my PC is here, my rig is over there. I need to run like, I think it's 7 meter powered extension cables to plug in USB devices. So having that hub in the back is handy. But for those of you that don't, you'll probably already have an extension USB hub of some sort, unless your PC is right near your rig. And obviously you'll need to, because this is only yay long, so you'll never run this straight to your PC, even though it is, you know, coiled. You'll still want to put it on an extension cable or something, otherwise it will be like stretched out and look a bit silly. But it does work just fine. So in use driving, flex, this is a very solid, heavy, well-constructed wheel. The only, I think I felt a little bit of, no, so it wasn't flex that I felt, but at the very lower right-hand corners here, the rubber, if you apply enough leverage, kind of just squishes a little bit. But that's just the rubber, and you would never be applying those sort of weird forces in use. So it's a very solid wheel. It doesn't flex. You'll have no issue with that whatsoever. So if you like the look of this wheel, or the various other colorways that are available that I showed you earlier in the video, then I have no problem recommending it as a good functioning wheel. Like I say, the only drawback for me is that these 5 rotaries on here are a little bit on that. I don't want to use the word flimsy, but they are very light in operation. But other than that, it's a perfectly decent wheel. It's priced very much up there with the rest of, you know, high-end sim racing wheels. And you're going to need to be comfortable spending that sort of money. But then if you're buying this, you've probably got, you know, maybe a SimuCube wheelbase that you've spent. So here's an interesting point, because you can spend 1,200 notes on a SimuCube wheelbase. This is 715 or 735 with the carbon fiber paddles. It's 3/4 to the price, you know, of your wheelbase. And yet it is really, and this is why high-end wheels irritate me a bit, it is really just a selection of inputs, micro switches and dials, you know, and then some aluminium, some carbon fibre and some rubber. It just seems silly, doesn't it, that you can buy a whole wheelbase. Well, I mean, you can buy, if you go Fanatic CSLDD, you can get a wheel, a base and some pedals, you know, direct drive wheelbase for less than the price of a steering wheel. So this really is for those of us, I say us, those of you, because I wouldn't spend £735 on a wheel, but that's just me. It's for those of you that really do, you know, have money to burn and want everything to be absolutely top notch and sort of the best build quality you can find. Or you just don't care because you've got so much money. Either way, if you like the wheel and you don't mind light in operation rotary dials and a cabled connection, then this is a perfectly decent wheel. I don't think Race at Home actually sell these, but there will be a link to the Race at Home website, because that's who's lent me this, for you to have a look at their wares. And I'll also put a link to the Gomez website should you be interested in buying one of these wheels. Anyway, I think that's pretty much it. Any questions, stick them in the comments. As always, thank you very much for watching, and take it easy.